10 things that evangelists never should do. If you're going to be an evangelist, if you're going to be successful, if you want to have longevity as an evangelist, especially if you are full-time traveling as an evangelist, I want to share with you these 10 things tonight that evangelists never should do. Let's get started. Number one, first thing that an evangelist never should do if you're going to be successful is fellowship with members without clearing it with the pastor. What I mean by fellowship, sometimes you've been invited to a church and it's your first time there. You really don't know the people there. Sometimes you don't know anybody there. There's no relatives. There's no friends. You don't have anybody there. And sometimes we go in and we start fellowshipping with people that may be members of that local congregation that we do not know. And sometimes you don't know what type of relationship or what type of member that may even be in that local congregation. And while you're fellowshipping with them, sometimes I've heard it and seen it, where sometimes when you did that, people would go in and they would start to, those that sometimes you can have a member or someone that is on the way out, or they're just sort of disgruntled with what's going on at church. And so they will begin to talk about the things at church and begin to express their dislike or their disappointment. And you're fellowshipping with them because you don't know. All you know is they're a member. You don't know what they are, what they're doing in that church, how they're doing. And so you just sort of go and you start the fellowshipping. I think that sometimes what we have to do, because the pastor is there all the time, he knows his members, he knows those that are there. Sometimes you would have to understand that you have to clear it or talk with the pastor to find out, this person or these persons or whatever, because sometimes I've found out that many times people have had doors closed on them because they did not use wisdom and just went to fellowshipping with people that were disgruntled, and then they start telling them stuff, negative stuff about the ministry, negative stuff about the church. And as an evangelist, it's not something you can afford to happen if you're going to be successful, because understand that you are there under the invitation, not of that member, not under the invitation of those that are there. You're under the invitation of that pastor or whoever invited you. And so the one thing that you really don't want to do is you don't want to mess that up by doing that. And so that's the first thing is the fellowship with members of the church without clearing it with the pastor, because you do not know who those persons are. You don't know if they're faithful in ministry. You don't know if they're the kind that give problems. You don't know if they're the kind that just keep up stuff. And there you are fellowshipping with them, whether it's inside or outside of whatever. And it's going to cause you a problem, because it's something that you have to make sure that you're clear always, and especially if this is your first time going to a place and you've never been there before. You've never been there. You've never been there. They've invited you, and so they trusted you to come. So please, by all means, that's number one. Number two, and this is very important. I pray that you get this one. It's very important. An evangelist should never counsel the members where you're running revival. Now, you have to understand that sometimes people in revivals, they get the evangelist there, and whether he's a prophet or she's a prophetess, or whether they've got a gift or whatever they do. And sometimes they'll come and they'll ask questions as to, well, what should I do about this situation? What should I do about that situation? And being that we are evangelists, just there for a few days, just for a day or 2 days or 3 days, a week or whatever time you may be there, and you go in, and when they start saying to you these various things, and then they want you to give them counsel, you should never, as an evangelist, counsel members at a local church where you're running revival, especially since you don't know the whole story of what's going on. And you're counseling them, and sometimes they want to know about the church, and you're counseling them about the things of the church, and you should never do that. I never forget, I was in revival preaching, and a young lady came up to me after the service, and I think I was in Oregon or something, and she said to me, well, I got this going on, that going on. And she was talking about her church and whatever. And she said, well, what do you think? And so I stopped and I asked her, I said, well, God bless you, Bishop Nichols. I said, well, what did your pastor say? And she said, well, my pastor said da 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 da. I said, well, whatever your pastor said, that's what I'm saying, because I'm not going to counsel you, and your pastor's already talked to you. So whatever your pastor has said, since he's here with you all the time, I'm saying what your pastor is saying. I'm not going to counsel you. We have to be careful that you do not. Thank you, Bishop. We have to be careful that you do not counsel people's members. That's not your job as an evangelist. You are an evangelist for a day, a week, or whatever time you're in, and you should not be counseling people's members. I don't care if they wanted to pull you into it. You don't allow people to pull you into counseling people and giving them what you think. No, turn them back to their leader. That's the reason they joined the church. He said that I will give you pastors that will feed you with knowledge and understanding. So turn them back to their leader to get counseling, and not you. Many times as evangelists, I see it sometimes even on Facebook and social media. We're trying to rectify or straighten out situations that we don't have the whole story to. So stop doing that. Stop trying to counsel people that you do not pastor. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. Stop trying to counsel people that you do not pastor. One more time. Stop trying to counsel people that you do not pastor, because you don't know the whole story. You don't know everything that's going on. And what I found out is people will give you one side, but they'll never tell you the whole story. They'll never tell you everything about what they want you to talk about. So never go in counseling people's members. Don't do that. That's very important. That should be one of your rules. I don't care how much people ask you. Never go in and counsel people's members. Never go in and they're talking about, well, my church this, my church that. No. I'm here to run revival. Plus, I don't want my spirit to become contaminated by the stuff you're sharing with me, that then when I get up, sometimes, and the human side will start preaching what you shared with me instead of me hearing from God to minister to what needs to be preached in the house. So we've got to understand that that's important. Never counsel people's members. Never do that. All right. Number 3, and we won't be long with this, but I want to go through. Number 3, you should never listen at members who are not with the pastor's vision. And then you get up and preach on the pastor and then wonder why you are never invited back. You have to be careful that you don't allow people to tell you stuff about their church. Listen, as an evangelist, I found out there's something about everybody's church you may not like. As a member, you may not like some about your church. But when you go in as an evangelist and people start telling you, well, I don't like the first lady, or I don't like the pastor's wife, or I don't like the children, I don't like the musicians, and they did this and they did that. And then when you get up, because you've allowed them to put all that in your head, you get up and try to biblically tie something in, and you start preaching against leadership. Understand that the person that told you that did not invite you. And the person that filled your head with that stuff didn't invite you to the revival. They didn't invite you to come do the revival. And even though they're telling you all that stuff, now you've jumped up and you're going at it and you're doing all your stuff. I want to tell you something. You ain't got to take my word. If you went back a year from the date that they told you, the people that told you are still going to be members there. But you won't be running revival, because you would have taken what they told you as an evangelist, something you never should do, and went against the pastor. You never should do that. You never should do it. Never. I don't care how much you feel. It's not your job to go in and do that. Your job is to minister and to preach, turn people toward God and their leader. And if they feel they're in the wrong place, then they should leave. But it's not your fight. It's not for you to go in and correct that. So I want to tell you, don't do that. Don't go in and listening to people that are not with the pastor's vision and talking about, well, I don't know why the pastor's doing this. Listen, you got to tell people. I've told people before when I ran revival, and they said, well, I don't think the pastor. I said, I tell you what, why don't you find you another church? What you mean I find it? Well, if you're not going to support, if you're not going to be with the pastor's vision, then why are you here? And I'm not going to let you get up and make me talk about the pastor. I don't know him that well. Sometimes I've been to places that was my first time meeting the pastor, or he invited me. So we're not going to do that. You should never preach against leadership when you go into a place like that because of disgruntled people that you've heard that have shared stuff with you. Okay? And I hope you're getting something out of this, because this is real stuff. These are the things that have happened. Now, this is one that's really going to get us because, this was something that was shared with me by Pastor Ernestine Cleveland Reams. Now, anybody that knows Pastor Reams, she's older, of course, but Pastor Reams, the daughter of the late Bishop E.E. Cleveland, set me down at her table, her dining room table when I was in Oakland, when I was really full-time, and I was running revival at Center of Hope. She set me down at the table and said, let me give you some instructions and help you to be a successful evangelist and help you to have longevity. And this is one of the things she shared with me, and so I've included this in this. And so this is number 4. She said evangelists should never stay in a city longer. When your revival is over, go home. She said, you don't have to stay there tomorrow. I'm going to stay a couple of days so I can go shopping. She said the same stores that are in California are in Texas, or they're in New York, so you can go home, especially if you're staying there. And when you stay in there, you're fellowshipping again with members that you don't know which way they're going, whether they're with the pastor or against the pastor, but the pastor gets wind that you were out fellowshipping. They thought you had went home. You close the revival Friday, and then Thursday of next week, you still in the city. And you should go home, because you just don't want what you're doing to be put out the wrong way. So that's a practice of mine. I'm usually on the first thing out when I run revival. I don't, I know sometimes you want to stay over, and maybe if you're preaching for someone else, that's a difference. But if you're not preaching for nobody else and you just stand over till mama gets tomorrow, I'm going to relax. Go home and relax. You can relax at home, but go do something. But don't let what you have done and being effective now turn around and hurt you. Go home. You can leave, go home. I'm on the first flight out. I'm going home. If I need to shop, if I need to go to Macy's, they got a Macy's in Georgia. If I need this, they got it in Georgia. But I'm on my way out of there, because I don't want what I just did to hurt and to be just thrown out the window because I stayed over too long. You need to go home. Don't stay lingering around in a city. And I'm going to get into something else in a minute that's going to help you. But stop lingering around in the city and just doing that. Go home. Did you hear what I said? Go home. You need to get on the first thing smoking and go home. You have had a successful revival, and you don't have another assignment in the city. Why are you staying 2 or 3 weeks? Okay? Go home. Go home. I want to help you tonight. Now, this will help you. Now, you can do what you want to do, but I'm going to tell you the things that I've done that have made me successful. Now, here's another thing, and this is one, I'm going through these tonight, and I pray that you're getting some. I think I'm doing something right, because I see my friend Bishop Nichols, he's a preacher. I see him on here saying right, so I'm on the right path. I heard, seen somebody else say I'm on point, so let's keep dealing. Number 5. Now, here's one that some people, they can do it, but I want to help you because everyone can't do this. Number 5, you should never go to 5 and 6 churches in the same city in a calendar year. Okay? You should never go 5 and 6 churches in the same city in the calendar year. Now, I'm talking now especially to those that are traveling full time, not just if you're local in the city and you're traveling within the parameters and in the location of a city where you preach, or the state if you're preaching, like in, say for instance, here in Georgia, if you're preaching in in Lithonia, and then you got another engagement in Decatur, and you got another one in. That's not. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about evangelists that come in and they are in the city, and they come to the city so much that sometimes they lose their effectiveness and their impact because they're here all the time. You got to understand that, you know, when you're here, and this is another thing that Pastor Reem shared with me, when you're in the city and you're going 5 and 6 times, find you a local church or a church that has invited you in, that they love your ministry. They've invited you. They've opened the doors, laid the red carpet out for you. Go to that church, and don't be guilty of going to 5 and 6 different churches within that calendar year and wondering why sometimes you're not as effective as you were, because now you've been, and people's mindset is like this. Sometimes I'm like this. I won't go hear a person today because I say to myself, if I give them 3 weeks, they're going to be back somewhere preaching. So why should I go? And I know they're coming back. They're going to be right back, because within the calendar year, they done been here 5 or 6 times. They done been here a whole bunch of times. So why should I go back? Because I know they coming back. I already know it. They're going to be here, and they're going to constantly come. As my success as an evangelist is, I went to a church and they were a blessing to me, then I went to that church. I didn't just float around the city going to everybody's church within the calendar year. Now, if I went back for one day, that's something. But just to come back and run revival, you should look at that. Some people can do it, but some people, that's not a good thing to do. I was watching something. There's a pastor friend that I preached for years here on. He's in Florida, and they signed a contract that he doesn't like if he invited evangelists, and they do good, pay you good and do good. He don't like evangelists to come back within a 50-mile radius, I believe it is, of his church, because he was the first one that invited them, and he says, hey, I want you to come, and I'm going to take care of you, and just do me a favor, and don't come back within 50 miles of my church. People sign the contract or whatever it is, they sign it, and then somebody comes in and offers them something they think is greater, and then they go and do something else. Well, understand, I always look at it like this. That's not, somebody might say, well, that's sort of holding people. No, if someone has been kind to you to invite you and you've never been to the city before, now that's another thing. If you've never been there before and they invited you to come, then certainly you ought to try to respect them, and especially if in the calendar year you call them, and anytime you call, they invited you, they let you come and preach anyway, you should try to respect them and their wishes and not be within, because if they want to bring you back in, sometimes I've seen people, when they first came, the revivals were packed out, and then they came back again to somebody else's church, and then eventually their numbers start going down, not because they were not anointed. It was just the fact that they had been there so much. And so you got to work on that. You can't do that. I know there's some that they can do it, and I know there are those that do it today. But I'm just sharing with those of you that you don't have it like that. You're not established like that. If you go to a good place, go to that place, and that'll be the place you go to. There are places that I go, and there are places that I've been. And when I traveled with my uncle, there were places that we went that it was just an annual thing. We didn't go anywhere else. When my uncle was alive, we used to go to Academy Cathedral in Los Angeles. That was the late Pastor Dahl Hart. We started that every Easter. Easter was our time. Every Easter we were there at Academy Cathedral. And we went to nobody else's church in LA. We went in Detroit. We went to Liberty Temple, late Pastor Ralph Hart, and they treated us so nice we didn't have to go anywhere else. That was our space. That was our spot that we went every year. People knew that if you're going to hear Gene Martin and the Action Revival team, you've got to go to Liberty Temple, because they're only coming to Liberty Temple one time that year. When we were in LA, they knew if you want to hear them, you got to go to Academy, because they're only going to be there one time a year. So it was effective for us. And so I want you to understand that you've got to look at that and see how that works for you. That may be one that may be flexible, but please, by all means, take it as good information. All right, we're moving right along. Number 6, this is another important one. I know it could be, it could be, but here it is anyway. Never argue over money or the offering and make a scene about it as an evangelist. In the long run, it's not worth the scene that you're going to make. So never argue over money. Never make a scene over the offering, because eventually God's going to bless you, but never make a scene, never argue over money, never fuss over money, because sometimes the problem that you may have is you may be dealing with a church or a pastor that has never been an evangelist. And we're going to talk about that in another thing. If he's never been an evangelist, then he may not know how to compensate you as far as your offering is concerned. But you should never argue and fuss with people, because sometimes rules change when people see you raising a lot of money. When people think you're not going to raise no money, they don't have no problem. When they think you're going to raise a lot of money, when they see you raise a lot of money, then sometimes they change the rules. That's just the way it is. You got to understand. But you cannot afford to be on the field arguing over money. I'll be honest. I'll be transparent with you. I had an incident that happened many, many years ago. I was full-time evangelist. I wasn't pastoring, so understand this was like 25, maybe 30 years ago. And I was preaching. I was invited to preach at a church in Ohio. And a friend of mine called me the week before I went, and he told me about the church. And he said, man, I don't know if you want to come, but I gave them my word. And so I went on. And so the pastor picked me up. I left. I went to our service Sunday morning at church, and then caught a flight and went there. I started revival that Sunday night. The pastor picked me up. I preached Sunday evening, and then we went to eat at Perkins. And after we went to eat at Perkins, and then the NBA playoffs was on. So it was the Chicago Bulls were playing the Portland Trail Blazers. So after church every night, I didn't go to eat. I just had them to stop me by the Wendy's or something to get something to eat, and went back to the hotel. Now, when the pastor picked me up, he said, now, do you want to stay at our house or stay at the hotel? I said, I prefer to stay at the hotel. So he said, all right. So I stayed at the hotel. Well, when we got to the end of the meeting and got ready to settle up with the money, he said to me, he gave me the breakdown of what the offering was. And so here was the breakdown. And so before he gave me what was going to come, he started telling me all the stuff that was coming off the top. Well, there's some people still do that, whether you believe it or not. He started telling me all the stuff is coming out the top. And so he said, it's $10 coming off for gas, $3.46 coming out for food, $15 out for food, $2 and some out for food or whatever. And he went down the line. And so I asked him, and we were in his finance office. And so I asked him, I said, well, what is the $10 for? And he said, for gas. I said, but I didn't drive. He said, but I had to pick you up from the airport and take you to the hotel and pick you up every night for church. And so at that point, I just sort of went, you're like, really? And so I told him, this is crazy. I can't believe you doing this, and da-da-da-da-da. Now, let me share this with you. As a young evangelist, and notice I was young, I was full-time, and I should have, I'll tell you what I should have done. I should have said to him, because his finance people were there and he's the pastor, I should have said to him, Pastor, can I speak to you privately in your office, or can we speak somewhere else that's not in front of the people? That's what I should have done, but I did not do that. Okay? So I want to help you. I want to be transparent to help you to understand that there's some things you cannot do, and I did that. And but I learned my lesson from that. You don't do that. You don't confront. You try to, if you've got an issue, if you got something that you need to deal with, talk with the pastor in a private setting or whatever. But don't confront him in front of his finance people, in front of his people, because at the end of the day, that's not going to hurt the pastor. It's going to hurt you. Okay, it's not going to hurt the pastor. It's going to hurt you, because you're the one that's, you're full time. You the one needs somewhere to preach. So it's going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt him. So don't do that. So don't argue over money. Don't fuss over money. I used to hear Pastor Reams said to me another thing. She said, don't fuss over money. Don't argue over money. She said, I don't do it. She said, but I tell you what, she said, if people mess with your money and do stuff like that and you're not happy, the next time they invite you, just be too busy to go. She said, just let them know you're busy and you don't go. And she said, because you want to keep your name, you don't want to get a reputation of a person that fights over offerings and fights over money. Okay, so that's another thing that I want to make sure that you understand. You don't have to fight over it. You know, next time they invite you, you don't have to go. You just, hey, I won't be able to make it. And I've been to places where people have done stuff with the money, and they do different things with the money. So what I did, I said, well, I'll tell you what, you do this, and I'll be happy. And sometimes they invite me back. I just say I can't make it. To do that. While we're on there, someone just put a question in. Is it wise for us to build contact with evangelists when we bring them in, or to have one made up before we go out? Today, basically, contracts are something that people do today. Brother Daniels, they do contracts today. A lot of people do contracts. And I know there are a lot of people that fuss and fight about, well, they shouldn't do contracts. You shouldn't have to do no contract. Well, I think on the side of the evangelist and the pastor, sometimes people do contracts because of what I'm talking about now. So there won't be no misunderstanding. And I said this last week, there won't be no misunderstanding about the finance, about the money, about what's being raised or what you're going to do. I've got someone that I'm looking to come in now, and they sent me some of their requirements, and I was going over it with my business administrator last night, and I was saying that we'll do this, but let's call them and talk about that right there. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's the safeguard, and so it's okay to do that by all means. Just to keep your business straight and to make sure that it's just not something you do now. Contracts, I said last week, it's on, I guess, by revival basis. Whoever you're going to, you got to know who you're sending contracts to, and you got to know if it's worth sending the contract, especially if it's someone that's going to take care of you anyway. Me, as being a pastor now and have traveled as an evangelist, most of the time if you come and preach, and if the money's not up to par, I'm going to give you more and take a hit anyway, because I understand that it is, how evangelists travel and what they need. And so sometimes I take the hit. But the money thing, we should never argue about money. But it's all right, again, Brother Daniels, to go out and get, if you got a contract, or if the church sends you a contract or whatever, however you do it. If you're in agreement with it, if y'all in agreement with it, then by all means do it. But at the end of the day, the point that I really want to make is don't argue over money. Don't make a scene. Don't go to fist fighting and blows, because at the end of the day, it's only going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt that pastor. It's going to hurt you when you start dealing with situations about money. All right. I pray this is helping. Now, here's that was number 6. Number 7. Never take members from the church where you did a revival to another revival without the pastor's permission, or tell them to ask their pastor. Okay? I've seen evangelists come to a city and preach, and people love the ministry. Sometimes it's the first time they've heard them, and so they may be going to another church to preach. And so say, in my church, I have service on Tuesday night, and just say you closed the revival on Friday, but you stayed over because somebody else wanted you to preach, and you was like, Pastor, they want me to preach. So I said, go right ahead. But you go over Tuesday night to preach for them, and within that week's time, you done connected with the members, and now my members, I shouldn't say my members, but the members of the church where I pastor are following you over there that Tuesday night, and Tuesday night is our service night. And you as an evangelist got them over there serving you water and being a nurse for you. And they don't even do that at their own local church. They're not even at their own Tuesday night Bible study or revival or service. So what you should do is you should make sure that you don't take members with you on other preaching engagements or assignments. You came, if you wanted somebody to go with you and help you, You should have brought somebody with you from wherever you came from. But you don't take other people's members. You don't take them and then go out and talk about they are from Pastor Martin's church. They want to come over here and hear me. No, you don't do that. No. You don't do that, because understand that gives the notion. And I'm gonna get into this one, and maybe I should make this one by itself. But let me finish this one, and I'll try to remember and make sure I don't forget. But don't take members. They need permission from their pastor if they're going to be following and going to another place. And especially if you are there running revival and you were the one that the pastor invited, and now you're going to preach in another church, and they're following you all over the city, and they don't even follow their own pastor all over the city. When he go out to preach, they don't even follow him. He's got a Sunday evening engagement. They don't even come. He's got a engagement and they don't even show up. But on a Tuesday night, and they never made Bible study, never made church, but on a Tuesday night, they're following you, and you don't have a problem with that. If you are a good evangelist, if you one that respects leadership, you would say to them, have you cleared this with your pastor? And if they have not cleared it with their pastor, you would say, no, you can't come with me, because I don't want to have any problems with your pastor. Okay? I'm being as real as I can tonight to help somebody to understand that you cannot do that. And so you need to understand that that's very, very important. Don't allow members, don't take them. I've seen people that have taken members with them, and they over there in a nurse's uniform. And I'm like, really? No, you don't do that as an evangelist, and you're not a part of you're not a part of that crusade team. You know, you shouldn't do that. Somebody said, should you have a team that travels with you? Well, I travel with my uncle. We had a team of people. There's nothing wrong with having a team of people traveling with you. But here again, if you're going to have a team of people traveling with you, give them to understand the rules. If the church is taking care of you, and you got 5 or 6 people traveling with you, and you want them to take care of all their expense and your expense, that's unfair to that church. They're asking for you. But if you got a team of people, then you should somehow put that together where y'all can work that out, you and the team of people. And then they know your ministry, so they know how you are. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. And so when you go to a place, it's okay to do that. People that will work with you, that know who you are. And I'm talking especially full-time evangelists, and even some that travel in the city. People, they may know who you are, and so do that. But my point is, make sure that those people that are doing that with you have gotten permission from their leader, their pastor at their local church to do that, because you don't want to be guilty. Because one of the things that have happened over the years, evangelists sometimes have done that and then turn right around. They'll go run a revival and they think, oh, people, they love me in this city. They coming to hear me. They love me. So they turn right around within a couple of months and come back and start a church. And when they come back to start a church, the people that were following them on that Tuesday night are usually the people that joined their church. And so it sort of gives that was something you were doing, that you didn't have integrity about what you were doing in the first place. You gave that sign of what you were doing that you shouldn't have done. So please, whatever you do, don't do that. Make sure that they've gotten permission from their pastor to follow you. Don't even tell me, y'all come hear me over there. No. If the pastor say you can't go over to hear me, don't you show up. Because I don't want to get in trouble with the pastor, and I definitely don't want to lose fellowship, because these are the things that have hurt evangelists over the years. And I want to help those of you that are getting started, those of you that are out there, to understand that you always talking about, this is my livelihood and people, they don't like me. No, it's not that they don't like you. You're just doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. And pastors have a way of just sort of not inviting you. If you feel that you want to do something, even if you feel you want to start a church, you should go and not have them invite you to a church to run revival. Go and rent you a hotel ballroom or go rent you a rec center or whatever it is, and then put advertisement on the radio, TV, Facebook, YouTube or whatever, and then you go and start a church, and then whoever come and join, then that's up to them. But you don't start a church as an evangelist from another man's church or another lady's church. Okay? And don't do that. Don't go in. I'm adding some stuff now, and don't go in talking about, your time at this church is up. That's some about that ain't right. Your time at that church is up. No. Don't do that. If they don't know their time is up, you shouldn't be coming to them telling them their time is up now because you want to start a ministry and start a church and you want them to follow you. You have no integrity. That's wrong, and you don't do that. When when I got appointed to the church I am now, I was assistant pastor at my brother-in-law's church, and I left, and I purposed that I would not go back. I went back for a service because he had some like a send-off for me, but I purposed that I would never go over to his church soliciting members. And my late church mother that passed last year, she was with me 18 years. She used to be over there as a church mother. But she said to him, I want to go over to Pastor Martin's church. And he released her to come to my church to visit. And she ended up staying and joining the church. And we had good fellowship. And when she had appreciation, she said, please invite Bishop over. And I invited him over to preach for her service. But understand that I didn't go back asking for anybody to follow me as a member and to come follow me. You don't do that as an evangelist. Okay? All right, we're getting there. I'm almost done, y'all. Thank y'all for hanging with me. Number 8. All right, here we go. Number 8. Evangelists should never have the members taking you shopping and buying you things for you without talking it over with the pastor and finding out, so you have full exposure and letting them know what's going on. You shouldn't have people out buying stuff for you and taking you shopping. I said last week, you should stay assigned to the people that the pastor has assigned you to and not be all over the place with everybody and all the members. Even sometimes you may know people, but you shouldn't be out with people having them shopping. Now, I had heard a friend of mine was sharing with me recently of how he had a person to come and run a revival for him, and the person somehow had he thought he was gone. I told you go home. He thought he was going home, but the guy hadn't went home, and he come to find out that he had said he didn't have no money, so he had got in fellowship with one of the members, ended up staying at the home of one of the young ladies, and had her out using her credit card, buying stuff, and on the promise that he was going to pay her back. And when she realized he's not paying me back, then she went and told the pastor about it. And when the pastor said something to him, he said, man, I thought you were going home. You cannot come back to my church. Now, you start understanding, well, why they won't let me come back? It's not that they don't want you to come back. It's just the fact that you do not understand that you cannot do that. If someone wants to buy something for you, you let them go tell the pastor that they want to buy it. All right? And let them give it to you in a way that everyone can see what they're giving to you. But you don't go out asking because they look prosperous or because they got some money or whatever. You have them taking you shopping and buying you stuff, and then it gets back and you wondering, how did that happen? What happened? Because you were out. That's not something you should be doing. Now, if it's somebody, it's a family member or somebody that you're close relatives or whatever, that's different. But you shouldn't have members out taking you on shopping sprees. That's why you should go home. You shouldn't have them doing it. You shouldn't have them paying for your plane ticket for your next revival, or paying for your, you didn't have enough money to get to a place. If you didn't have enough money to get there, all of us have had times when we didn't have enough money to do something, and we had friends that we had to call and say, please, send me some money so I can get out of here. But you don't go and do that, getting it from the members. You don't do that. Don't go shopping. That's not what you do. Okay? I want to help you because understand that at the end of the day, it hurts you. It don't hurt the people that it's going to hurt you. it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you. So you got to watch that. And so don't do that. Another thing, and then I'll get to this last one. Well, let's do it number 9, and then we'll hit number 10. The last thing is evangelists should never let your good be evil spoken of. The only thing you have is your name. The only thing you got is your name and your anointing. And once you lose that, it's lost. I don't care what people tell you. I don't care how much they still invite folk. There's a certain thing that goes with having credibility. There's a certain thing with going with people seeing you in the light that they can trust you. And so when you go, don't let your good be evil spoken of. Don't go in doing things that are questionable from the beginning. Don't go in. You don't go in to establish. You don't go in to establish. Well, how should I put this? You don't go in getting your own. Talking about I need a mailing list. Why you need a mailing list from my church? Why you need emails from my church? Why do you need that? No, you do not. You don't go in and then later on, I want to contact. Now, if I get on Facebook right now and said, I want everybody to contact me. If you will contact me, I'm going to put this link down and this is the email address, and you send it to me and I send you some. That's different. But if I'm in your church, I shouldn't be trying to get phone numbers and email addresses and addresses so I can send people stuff back later and soliciting offerings and soliciting things. And these are people that's at a local church. And I'm asking them, give me money for my birthday, or give me money for this, or give me money for that. And I've been invited by that local pastor. That's something that you don't do. You are invited. You don't need to do that. It's not something that is right for you to do. And I know people will argue the fact, well, they just want to hold us back. No, nobody's trying to hold you back. We're trying to give you common sense. It was Jesse Jackson says you got to learn to take common sense to high places. You got to learn to understand that there's certain things you just cannot do. And you're a good being evil spoken of, because the thing that you don't want to happen is all the good you've done to be wiped out by some crazy stuff you do. And so you don't want that to happen. So you've got to learn to always mind yourself, always understand what you're doing, and keeping your name where your name is good. You don't want when people mention your name, they go, no, because some things follow you. They can follow you. When you think about Jacob and Esau, I preached a message one time about him sacrificing his future on the altar of the present. Sometimes you can do stuff now that can hurt you for years. And as much as people should forgive, sometimes people don't forgive that quick. And so you have to watch what you do. You don't want your good to be evil spoken of. Always try to carry yourself in a way that people will respect you. People will have where they can look at you with respect. And so as an evangelist, if you're going to be traveling, there's some stuff that you just got to do. You can't do it any other way. You've got to be mindful of what you do. And if you are, if you're a single evangelist, you got to be mindful. If you're a female evangelist, you got to be mindful. Male, if you're married, you got to be mindful. There's a whole lot of things. Let me give you some stuff that just makes sense. If you're an evangelist and you're at the church and, say you're a male and you're married or either not married, a female comes by and she may look good. And because you're a male, you're attracted to the opposite sex. And I understand that. But you can't get over the mic saying all kind of crazy stuff. Now you look good, because people could take that the wrong way. So you got to be mindful of what you're saying, even from the pulpit, and the things you do. Now, here's another thing, and I'm going to get off of here. When you get up to preach, number 10, evangelists should never get up preaching. And I said this last week, you should never get up dealing with doctoring and dealing with things concerning that church, especially things that you don't know if you don't know the rules of that church. All of us were raised different, so you need to find out what's going on or what that church believes in. But you don't get up telling folk, you get up talking about I remember one time we were doing a piece on social media, and we were talking about the millennials and social media and how millennials, they're on social media. I'm on social media. You see, you're looking at me. I'm on social media. So we're talking about social media, and all of a sudden we had somebody to preach, and when they got up, they just went off on social media. I mean, just went totally off. And social media ain't nothing but the devil. And I'm sitting there going, really? We just got through talking about social media, trying to encourage our young people and get them involved, and now you beating them up. Stop doing that. Stop going into places and just hammering on stuff that you have no clue about and trying to say, I'm trying to help somebody. People say, well, years ago they used to tell us, you shouldn't go to the movies. So people jumped on the movies. You hear people in revival, just going to the movies. But now, of course, over the years, we found out the movies come to your house. You don't have to go to the movies. You can sit right there on your iPad or whatever and watch whatever's at the movies. You can watch it in your house. But we used to hammer on that. Then they used to hammer on different things. And so when you get there, you're in the areas that's for that pastor to preach and to take care of. It's not for you to get into those areas trying to correct people in that church. That's not your job. That's not your assignment. That's not your calling. I'm going to go even further than that. That's not even your assignment and your calling on Facebook. It's not your calling on social media. When I see evangelists get on social media and they try to correct pastors and try to correct people, and you are out, you don't have a church, you have, some of you don't have a church, you ain't preached at nobody, you preach at churches, but you don't have a church. So you don't even understand sometimes what goes on behind the scene, and you're being critical and you're jumping all over the pastor and stuff. Don't do that, because I saw something the other week, and I'm going to share this and I'm going to get out of here. But I saw something the other week where a man was making, I think he was making 6 figures. And he decided at the drive-thru, and I'm sure you can look this video up on YouTube. He decided at the drive-thru to make a comment while he was ordering his food at, I think it was Chick-fil-A. And somebody, the person that was whatever, he didn't want, he filmed it and then he put it on social media. And then he ended up losing his 6-figure job. And so he had a house, he lost all it, they had to sell this stuff. And then he got another offer a couple of hundred miles away. And so when he was getting ready to do that, they hired him and he was getting ready to move out there and start a new career, new job. But somebody somehow pulled up what he posted on social media. And that company said, we can't hire you. And they didn't hire him. And now he's out trying to find a job. And his message to everyone was, be careful what you post on social media. Understand, you cannot, as an evangelist, get on social media and post whatever you want to post. Say whatever you want to say about churches and pastors, and then turn around and want them to invite you to their church. Because if our churches are that bad, then why should we let you come? Okay? So you got to watch even what you put on social media. Everything I type on social media, there's some things that I was like, maybe I shouldn't post that. And there's some things I don't post because I think it through. I'll be like, nah, somebody's going to take that the wrong way if I say that. Somebody's going to think I'm talking about this or that, so I won't post it. Doesn't mean that, I shouldn't know. I got the freedom to post whatever I want to. But understand, this stuff don't go off of social media. It stays on social media. And if it stays on social media, what's going to happen is somebody's going to pull it up. Because even though I'm doing this live tonight, I'm doing live right here. There's some people that are not watching this live, but guess what they're going to do? They'll get an opportunity to watch this back tomorrow. It'll be on here next week. It'll be on here 2 months from now. They'll get a chance to see it. So if I say something crazy now, what's going to happen is somebody can look back and forward it to somebody and say, this is what Martin said. So as an evangelist, if you're going to be effective, you got to watch what you say, what you do, even if it's on social media. You cannot post everything on social media. You cannot say everything you want to say on social media. I don't care how grown you are. Because people watch social media. They look at it, they watch it, and believe you me, sometimes they may have been thinking about inviting you. but because they read what you did, they wouldn't invite you. I said to my daughter, I was getting ready to invite someone to preach at our church, and nice person. I like the ministry, but when I started reading their post, every post they put out was a negative post. It was always some negative about something, or negative about the church, and negative about this. And so I thought to myself, why would I want to bring someone that negative into my church to contaminate my atmosphere? Why would I want to do that? I'm not going to bring you in to contaminate my atmosphere with your negative self. So I just wouldn't invite him. I said, I'm not going to invite him. One day I may, but if their posts still stay the same way, and some people say, well, they ain't negative. Sometimes they just telling the truth. Some of this foolishness is not true. Some of it, people are bitter, and because they're bitter, they're pushing it out on everyone else, and you can't do that. If you're going to be successful, you can't do it. Well, I pray and trust that you were blessed. Let me see, can I look at a few of these things and see if there's anyone. Okay. Okay, what about, somebody said, what about false prophets or prophetess? Yeah, well, you gotta go into a church, and sometimes if you miss stuff, you just miss it. But you gotta watch yourself. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a whole lot, y'all. I mean, that's why I'm writing this book, and I'm writing this book. I've seen a whole lot, but I want to say to those of you, I want to help those of you that are here, that are doing this now, that you will not fall into the same categories and mistakes that other people have fallen into, and things have not worked, and they're not working, because at the end of the day, if you're going to be successful and have longevity, you're going to have to be able to do some things where you're not just out running revivals and just doing stuff because you think. Because sometimes as evangelists, we believe that we're untouchable. We believe because, people like me, and if they don't invite me to this church, I'll go to another church, and I'll go to this church. Understand that. Let me tell you something. And I've always said this, and I know it's maybe a bad comparison, but let me say it anyway, if you allow me to be free enough to be real with you. I've always said that an evangelist has to be careful, because a pastor, I shouldn't put it like this, but I think I associate sometimes pastors can be almost like the mafia. And what I mean by that is you can go mess up in one church, and one call from that pastor can close 10 doors for you. I mean, the one call can open 10 doors, one call can close 10 doors, because you did something crazy. And now with social media the way it is today, there ain't no thing of it traveling. Time you do it, it's out there. It's basically out there. So you have to be very, very careful when you go to doing that, because if your livelihood and your ministry and your assignment is to churches, and you're the minister at churches, then you want to keep those doors open. You want to keep a good time. We're going to talk about pastor evangelist relationships. You want to keep you want to keep things going. Sister Perry, you're right. You don't have to prophesy to get attention. If you're not a prophet or a prophetess, if you the word of wisdom, word of knowledge, if you're not dealing in those gifts in those areas, don't do what you don't do. Don't make nothing up. Don't talk about something that's not, don't just make it up just because you can make it up. Don't do that. Be effective in what you're doing without all the add-ons that you don't have, because somebody's going to accept you for whoever you are and whatever you do. Now, there are times I've prophesied to people and they receive things, and then there are times I've just preached, and then the other times I just worked the altar. But it's a fact that you've got to know what you're called for. Now, here's another thing that I maybe I share with you. When you go to a place to minister, you need to find out what you need to do, first of all, because every place is different. There's some people don't believe in some of the stuff we do anyway. and that's the truth. They don't believe in it. So you got to be able to deal with that, and you got to know where you're going. And then you've got to become flexible. Bishop Borders, God bless you. You got to become flexible, because sometimes we got one set ministry and we preach the same way and the same things in every place we go. But did you not know, if doors are going to open for you as an evangelist, you've got to become flexible, because you may be ministering to people that, a whole different group of people. I'm a part of Church of God in Christ, of course, but over my years, I've ministered under tents where we had Indians. No, I didn't see any black people, any Caucasians, just Indians, and ministered to Indians and dated with an interpreter. They interpreting while you're preaching. And I had to become flexible to do that. I've ministered in churches where there were all Caucasian, no black people. The only black people there was us. And I preached there. I never forget one time I was preaching years ago. I think we were in Kentucky or somewhere, and I was preaching, and I guess I was too loud, and the guy was just like this, and he had his hands over his head just like this, and he just kept them. And so after church, I was just sort of curious, and he said, "Oh, you was just too loud. It was hurting my ears." Well, I had to remember what kind of church I was in. I was used to hooping, but they were enjoying it just by me talking. So you got to learn how to be flexible. You got to learn how to do that. And so I pray and trust that tonight, let's go over these real quick, and then I'm going to get out of here. I've been on here longer than I intended to, but let's go over these real quick for those of you that may be coming in late. Just give you a list of it just real quick. And that's this. Number one, fellowshipping with the members of the church without clearing it with the pastor. Number one, you should never do. Never counsel the members where you're running revival. Number three, never listen at members who are not with the pastor and his vision, and then get up and preach on it and wonder why you're not invited back. Never stay in the city longer than your revival. Go home. Number five, never go to 5 or 6 churches in the same city within a calendar year. Number 6, never argue over money or the offering and make a scene. Number 7, evangelists should never take members from the church where you did a revival, take them out without the pastor's permission or asking them to get permission from their pastor. Number 8, never have the members taking you shopping and buying you things without them clearing it with their pastor. Number 9, never let your good be evil spoken of. And then number 10, when you go to preach, don't deal with doctrine. Just go in and minister what God has given you to minister. Let the other stuff be left up to the pastor. And I promise you, if you follow these things that I've shared with you tonight, you're going to find that you're going to have longevity. People will invite you, because the pastor never wants to bring an evangelist in that's going to hurt him. He never wants to bring an evangelist in where it's going to take him 6 months to correct what you've done in 3 days. So you've got to understand your calling, your purpose, what you're there for, what you're supposed to do, why you're there, and go in and do it, and then get out of there. Go home, and then let your ministry be effective. I pray and trust you got something out of this tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions for me, I'll take a few questions real quick. If you have any, just put them in the comment section and let me seek and I answer. I don't have all the answers, but I've been doing this long enough to know that there's just some things you don't do. And there's some things that will help you as you go on. And if you do them right, you'll find yourself being blessed, and God will move for you. So if there's any questions, I'm going to wait just a few minutes and see if you have any. If not, I'm going to get out of here. But again, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Next week, we're going to be dealing with, I want you to get as many of your pastor friends as you can. Next week, we're going to be dealing with pastor-evangelist relationships. We want to deal with the pastor-evangelist relationship because you may not know the pastor personally, but, you know, there is a relationship that the pastor and evangelist should have, that you should get with these pastors so you'll know how they're thinking when they bring you into their church. And we're going to deal with some of those things. We'll be talking about what pastors should do, what evangelists should do. We're going to be talking about what the pastors maybe should not do. and we'll help you as much as you can. Oh, thank you so much. I pray and trust that this has helped you. And if you're an evangelist, listen, I want you to do me a favor. You can go to my website, dlmartin.org, and sign up. And I'll be sending out newsletters or videos, giving little tips about being evangelist. I'm not trying to start a church. I got one. I'm not trying to get a following. I'm just trying to help somebody. And I want to be a blessing to you and to help you so you'll be able to do the things you need to do as an evangelist, because I want you to be the best you can be. Thank you so much. I want you to be the best you can be. I want to help you out. I want you to be able to do the things that you've got to do. And if you go join me, I want to make sure that I keep in contact with you to help you, and it'll be a blessing to you. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to get out of here until next Wednesday. All right, here's some, should an evangelist call a pastor for a revival? All right, well, let me put it this way. It's okay to call a pastor for a revival. You shouldn't blow up his phone. I mean, you shouldn't blow up his phone where you just, constantly calling him. And if he wants you to come, he's going to invite you. And sometimes people invite you because you're just blowing up their phone so much. So don't do that. Just, just blowing up the man's phone. I never forget, and Bishop Derek W. Hutchins, the father, I never forget this. I called him and wanted to do a revival at his church. And this is what he did with me. This was the wisdom that he did with me. What Bishop Hutchins did was this. My brother-in-law was preaching for him in Chattanooga. And when my brother-in-law got through preaching, Bishop Hutchins, Pastor Hutchins at the time, gave me the mic. He said, go on and minister to the people. And so I started, ministering and praying for people. And so he said, I want you to be at my church in Columbia Sunday. And he brought me. Now, this is what he told me when I first called him about coming and do revival. And I respect him today for what he said. And I have to respect him. I never heard anybody say this. He said, let me first see if your ministry fits in with my church. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Let me first see if your ministry fits in with my church. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And once he saw my ministry fit in with his church, he invited me to come. Everybody's ministry is not for a church. Every church is not for your ministry. Every church is not for you. You're not, just because it's an open door don't mean you should always run to it. Every church is not for you. Some places you won't be effective there because it's not for you. So you got to know. So nothing wrong with calling to ask, but don't blow the phone up and don't become annoying doing that. That's, try your best not to do that. How do you find out your calling besides fasting? Well, one thing about it, if you are called to do this, you're going to know you're called to be an evangelist. Evangelists are a special, how should I say it? They're a special breed. They're a special cut. When you're an evangelist, you know it. There's a special breed. There's a special cut of an evangelist. Everyone can't do evangelistic work. Everyone can't be an evangelist. I don't care how much they try. Evangelist is more than traveling. It's more than running revivals. It's more than preaching. Evangelist work is more to it than that. Believe you me. I was saying to, I see Pastor Edmund Williams, he spoke for us last night, and I was saying to him last night, man, we were cut from a different cloth. If I had what they do today, if I had it that way years ago, oh man, I'd probably be, who knows what we would be doing. Because, they got social media, they got all the other stuff that they got going on. But when we were coming up, we were getting to the revival by any means necessary. We rode buses, Trailway, Greyhound. We drove in cars, whatever way it got to get to the revival. We didn't stay in five-star hotels. We stayed wherever it was. If it was a nice hotel, good enough to sleep in, and we stayed there and did revivals and stuff. And we were concerned about souls and stuff. And we were blessed during that day. We were still making some pretty good finances and stuff. But there's a whole different thing. Now people have a whole different mindset. And unfortunately, some of it has come to the place that it has become, I hate to say this, some of it has become entertainment more than ministry. And it's become strictly business more than anything. It's to see how many people I can get to follow me, how many people, how many places I can go, and and all that. But at the end of the day, God has called you to be an evangelist. It's something that you have to be called for, because it takes a lot out of you doing this. Same way you have to be called in anything else. But I'm just speaking from the standpoint of an evangelist. All right. Somebody said I'm an outside minister. Yeah, you've got people that deal with outside. Some of you may be called to do street ministry as an evangelist, and that's a special calling people have to have, because everyone don't want to hear you while you're out in the street talking to them. That's not what they want to hear. So that's a special calling you have to have. So you've got to really find out what your calling is, and then these things that we've shared with you tonight, please govern yourselves accordingly, and don't go out doing those things that may hurt you, because at the end of the day, what you want to do is be effective. You want your ministry to have an impact. And as I leave you, I say this: I run into people all the time, and I run into young men and young ladies that say, "You don't remember me." I said, "No." They said, "I was a teenager when you came to our church, and you were ministering at our church. And as a teenager, you inspired me to preach. You inspired me." So that's what you want. You want to be, inspired. Sister Perry, how can you get exposure? Well, you can get exposure through, now exposure is right here through YouTube and Facebook and all these type of things, and clips of people. I see people now going places that we probably never would have heard of them had not they put a clip, or somebody put a clip of them up preaching or ministering. So that's a way of getting exposure. If nothing wrong with, even on Facebook, nothing wrong with getting a professional flyer done and listing what you do. If you are a speaker and you're open for engagements, nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, people try to make it seem like there's nothing wrong, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, put it out there. People don't know who you are unless I've got a whole generation that don't know, who I am, or they don't know what I did years ago, but now they're discovering, oh, Pastor Martin. Oh, and then they go look and they say, I didn't even know you had that much on you, because, they try to tell me I look young, and I'm 56. I'll be 57 next month. But they say, you look young. You don't look like you've been doing that long. But I have. I've got grown kids and grandchildren. So understand that nothing wrong with putting it out. When we were coming up, we used to put flyers out and stuff out, but we didn't have social media to do it. But now that you have it, by all means, use it. Videotapes and everything. The apostle here saying, preacher helped them to understand building the pastor. And we did that earlier. And we did it in the last session. Build the leadership, build the pastor, build the church. And let me say this is so important. If you are an evangelist and you don't have a local church, go find you a local church. Go join yourself to a local church. Don't be running around this country freelancing and just preaching everywhere, and you don't have a covering. You don't have no one you can be accountable to, no one that can sit down and tell you something. I've said this at my church, and I'm going to say it, and I say it again. I tell them all my time in my church, and I know some people, this may offend people, but anybody that I cannot discipline, I cannot pastor. If I can't discipline you, I can't pastor you. Okay? If you can't be disciplined, then you can't be pastor. So if I can't discipline you, so as an evangelist, you want somebody that can pull you in when they're supposed to pull you in and say to you, don't do this, don't do that. That's important to have that. I had it many days. My uncle would, I call it jacking me up, but he jacked me up many days and just, do stuff like that. So it helped us a whole lot. And so, please build a pastor. Don't go in and tear the pastor down. Don't let people make you preach against leadership while you're there, because you probably won't be going back. Okay, what advice would you give a first-time pastor? I give you as a first-time pastor, if you're just starting out and you're pastoring, if you've never been an evangelist, or if you have been an evangelist, and we're going to talk about how the transition between the pastor, a full-time evangelist, and pastor. But if you're a first-time pastor, I want to tell you, work on building your church, ministering while you're ministering to the people that are there, and don't so much get concerned with trying to get a whole lot of people with big names to come to your church, but start getting the strength of your church and building your local church. I said to my members once, and I was ministering, that I want at my church, I want members with homeowners mentality. And somebody said, well, what do you mean by that? Because notice something about a homeowner. Anybody here, if you've ever bought a house, if you've ever purchased a house, give me some thumbs up, because you're going to understand what I'm about to say. If you've ever bought a house, if you've ever purchased a house, you know what happens? They take you through so much to get that house. I mean, they take you through stuff. You got to sign papers, and when you think you've got everything they need, they call and ask you for something else. The realtor wants to ask you for something else. The lender, the person, the underwriter, everyone's keep asking you for papers. That finally, when you get to going to closing, when you get to the closing and actually sit down at closing, oh my God, when you get to closing and you sign those papers and you become a homeowner, when you go to that house, guess what? If something break in that house, you're not moving in 6 months. You're going to get it fixed. If something break in that house, you're not moving. You're going to get it fixed. Why? Because I've got 30 years or 15 years or whatever to pay for this mortgage. And I plan on staying here after all the stuff I've been through to get here. I plan on staying here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here and I'm going to work on this house and make it whatever I want it. I'm doing some remodeling at my house now. Some stuff that I didn't think could happen at my house. My wife said, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it looks like a totally different place. And so we say, hey, no need to move and just do what we're going to do and remodel it. And so if you get some members with homeowners mentality as a first-time pastor and just start preaching, you get some people that understand that there's not going to be anything perfect about this church. But I'm going to stick with the church and stay with my pastor and my leader, because of the fact that if I do that, God's going to bless both of us and bless the church and bless the ministry. Then that's what you do. So that is something that you really have to do when you are pastoring. Start working on the mentality of people that will stay. Not just people that'll run for everything, anything happen, they just up and out the door. You need to be able to really, really, really stay and pastor your church. Now, I made a conscious decision, and I'll get into this in another session. I still evangelize, but I made a conscious decision when I first got appointed to the church that I stopped evangelizing as much full time so I could be at church and build the health of my church and deal with the health of my church. And so that was my decision. Everyone don't have to do that, but that's what I did. That's my decision that I made concerning doing that. And so I want to say to you, be encouraged, hang in there, keep doing what you're doing. And those of you that evangelists, do the work of the evangelist. Make full proof of your ministry, because you are very needed, whether you believe it or not. We need a revival in the land. And evangelists that understand their calling and their purpose and what they're doing, people are going to be saved. Yes, Apostle, it's a book, and I'm working on one right now. We're in the midst of getting everything put together. And I'm also going to be doing some DVDs. So that's why I need y'all to subscribe here. Either go to my website again, dolmartin.org, and sign up, because when the book comes out, you want to be able to get it. We're working on this because my endeavor, and I see my good friend Pastor Darrell Winston on here. He's a prophet. He prophesied to me recently. This is something that we have to do to help people. And I've been out here a long time doing this. And some of you may not be familiar with me. Some of you may not even know who I am. Maybe this is the first time you see me. One lady said, I don't know who you are, sir, but you are definitely teaching concerning the ministry of the evangelist. Well, I've been doing this since I've been preaching since I was 16. I was an evangelist, a full-time evangelist from the age of 18, and I still do that, and I'm 56 and travel all over. And then 21 years now pastoring, but still evangelizing. And so I have a lot that I know about. My late uncle, Evangelist G. Martin, was an evangelist that traveled with a Caucasian evangelist in the 60s, the late A.A. Allen. So I'm very familiar about the work of the evangelist, and many, just some things have changed, social media and some other things, but basically most things are the same. And so I want to be able to help those that are coming behind me to be effective, that when you get to the place, you won't make some of the same mistakes we made. You won't make some of the same errors we made. You'll be able to bless people and be a blessing to others, and God will move. Listen, you all, I've been here so long. I got to get out of here. Thank y'all so much. I'm so glad to have you all with me tonight. Don't forget, next Wednesday, 7:30, we're going to be dealing with pastor evangelist relationships, and it's going to be a blessing. Get as many pastors on here as you can, because I want to help not only the evangelist, but I also want to help the pastor in what you're doing. Well, God bless you again. Don't forget, go to my website, dlmartin.org, sign up for the newsletter, and then after this is over, share this with, hit it and share it with all your people, all your contacts, and everybody. Share it all over the place. I know it'll be a blessing to them. God bless each and every one of you, and may all God's best be yours.